So this is something a little different. As you can see, it's blood. One of my viewers lamented the fact that my last long play, which was the Death Wish mod for this, wasn't done as a Let's Play. Because he wanted to hear my comments and thoughts and whatnot, and you know, I can get behind that, but at the same time, I just kinda wanted to do a long play without thinking about it too much. It's easier to just play without having to commentate too. So this video is kind of, I guess, a way to remedy that, in which I will just kind of discuss some thoughts and my history with this game, because it's a little bit different than what you might expect. And just for some extra novelty, this is being recorded off my Windows 98 computer, so it's an authentic MS-DOS environment for the game. That's why the video looks a little kind of blurry, I suppose, because it's an S-video capture, but yeah, it's good enough.
I live again.
So, Blood was a game that came rather late for me. I didn't hear about Blood or even know what Blood was, really, to any real extent until like the mid-2000s. So I was definitely a late joiner on that front. What had happened was, it was like early 2007, and DOSBox saw a significant speed update with like version, I think, 0.7.0. Up until that point, DOSBox was just not that fast, and especially not fast enough to play games like this without significant problems. I mean, there might have been a little bit of support for it, I guess, if you had a good enough computer, but at the time that just wasn't something that I had, and getting a huge speed upgrade for DOSBox with the release of that version was a good thing. And I remember someone saying, "Oh man, I want to try out Blood now." And then I thought to myself, hey, I've never played Blood either, so why don't I give it a go? So I just found the game somewhere. I don't even remember where now. It's okay, I've got a legal copy now, but back then, not so much. And I was just looking around, and I found it, and I was just like, oh man, let's try this game out. Because, I mean, I knew that it was a build engine game, you know, like Duke Nukem 3D and Shadow Warrior. And, that's about all I knew. And coming into it, I didn't really know what to expect, so I started the game up, and foolishly I selected the
Open for business.
the second hardest difficulty, Well Done, like right off the bat, which is not something I should have done, because Well Done is very difficult. And as a whole, this game is very difficult. It's not like playing Duke Nukem on Come Get Some, the second hardest difficulty, is not that bad, but this game is a whole nother beast. And it's mostly due to the hit-scan cultists that are fairly frequent throughout the entire game. They do a lot of damage from a reasonable distance. Even on the skill I'm playing on right now, which is lightly broiled, the medium skill, which is usually what I play on anyway, they do a lot of damage and can be extremely dangerous when they have high numbers or just kind of awkward placements. And so what I kept doing is I was playing on Well Done, and I couldn't even get past the stage I'm on right now. I just kept getting destroyed because there's no, you know, there's a lot of, like, when you run out to this area right here, there's a lot of dudes already aimed at you, and they just tear you down. You basically get no chance to do much of anything. You kind of have to sneak around, and I didn't quite grasp that initially, so what ended up happening is I just got destroyed over and over again. The farthest I ever saw was like the second level. And it just, I don't know. I didn't really find the game that fun, because I just couldn't do anything. I mean, I could have tried other episodes, but I figured I wanted to play them in order, see how the story pans out. This would just work for me. There we go. I don't know. So, despite having the game in 2007, I really didn't give it a genuine go until about 2011, because I used gameplay footage of Blood as a stinger in a John Satir episode. It kind of closed out that given episode. I think it was the Superman Big Alliance episode. And my other friends at the time were playing Blood as well. They were talking about it and playing it, and they kind of got me interested in the game again. So, with that in mind, I think I finally set aside some time to give the game a college try, because I really hadn't given it a good, fair try up until that point, and I was playing on the medium difficulty this time, and I was finally able to kind of get around and do the things I wanted to do from the get-go without it being that much of a problem. You know, with the difficulty turned down, it's nowhere near as bad. It still can be rough, but it's not, like, wholly unpalatable like it was. And that was kind of a problem at the time. Not so much anymore. Luckily. But yeah, I was a latecomer to this game. My brother would have been the one who would have known about a game like this back in the 90s, because I learned about games through him, and he would play games like Doom and Duke 3D and all those other PC games of the time. And I learned them from him because he was my brother, and I followed him around a lot, as brothers sometimes do. But, yeah, I don't think my brother ever figured out about this game. I don't think this is something that he might have seen it in a magazine or somewhere else, just briefly, but this was never a game we purchased, and therefore a game that just never kind of entered our minds at the time. So, you know, me getting into the game in 2011, or rather seeing it for the first time in 2007 and then getting into it in 2011 is just kind of a consequence of that. I just never saw it in the 90s. I don't even know how I would have I don't know how I would have reacted to a game like this in the 90s. It might have been too much for me because, you know, I wasn't super scared of stuff or anything, but, you know, there were moments in even games like Doom, and especially like Doom 64 and whatnot, that could make me creep the hell out. And this game is not like...
Take it, please.
This game's not like other build engine games like Duke and Shadow Warrior that really play up the humor element. It's present in the game, but it isn't a big factor. I mean, there is a lot of tongue-in-cheek for sure, but it's not a big thing. There's also quite a lot of grotesque and horror in this game that maybe isn't so bad now, but, you know, to me as a kid, being a kid and all, it might have been too crazy, you know? I might not have even liked it. I certainly don't think my parents would have approved of it.
Hello, may I speak to Mr. Josh? First name Hugh.
Now, not long after my, my newfound appreciation for the game that I got in 2011, I did do a Let's Play of this game in early 2012, and that to date remains one of my favorite LPs that I've done, because it was kind of like my transition from the awkward and less nice LPs I did in the past into kind of a more confident and comfortable state of mind when I actually play. Because in my early LPs, if you watch them, you know, it's very rigid, and I kind of just talk, I just kind of ramble about things that are happening, and I mean, this is my earliest LPs. Around the time I did Wolfenstein Sextilogy, that's when I was starting to lighten up. And then by the time I did this, I had lightened up a bit more. The last LP to date I've ever done, actually, is that Project Base one that I did back in 2015. I haven't done any since then, mostly just because I haven't been really thinking about them. I've just been kind of focusing on doing regular old gameplay. Because sometimes I just have an easier time doing that, because I don't have to think about commentary. But yeah, that Let's Play still is one of my favorites, even though it does have issues with it that I would, consider fixing nowadays, had I had the ability to do so. I don't think I'll do like a revisited LP like I did with Doom, because this game, although I really like this game a lot, it's not like Doom, and plus I don't want to make a habit of redoing all my old LPs. I've already done Doom and Doom 2, so I'm not trying to go too crazy with that. It's a fun thing to do sometimes, but Again, I'm not trying to make it habitual. Now, this game has a very small modding community, because, you know, this game, for what it's worth, it's a great game, but one big thing that has held it back considerably is that, unlike, you know, Duke 3D, Doom, and other famous games of that time, this game never received a proper source port. Up until just these past couple of years, playing it through DOSBox or playing it on real hardware like I am now was your only option. Because Monolith never released the source code, and now the source code is in the hands of Atari, who, you know, by and large don't give a single shit about this game, yet still aren't going to release the code at all. I mean, you can just forget ever seeing the source code being ripped out of Atari's hands, because that is just not going to happen. Not for a large sum of money. Probably way more than anyone originally who worked on this game would even be willing to pay to get it back. And that has hampered this game's potential immensely, because games like Doom and Duke getting source ports, you know, that opened up a lot of new features that could be implemented into the original engine and expands the modding capability considerably. But none of that happened with this game, because the source code never saw the light of day. And many efforts were made in an attempt to, you know, kind of recreate the game or do this and that to, you know, make something happen. But the fact of the matter is, it was only until very, very recently that such a thing even somewhat successfully happened, to put it that way. And that's a shame, because this game, I feel like if the source code would have come out in the early 2000s or something, this game could have had a lot more modding potential right out of the starting gate. And, you know, more people would be playing it today. But given that it's already kind of a cult game to begin with, because this game did see some advertising and whatnot and that kind of thing, but it didn't reach the level of prevalence that games like Duke 3D did, not even close. And that also, you know, made it not really stick around as much as it probably could have. But, I mean, you can't really have everything, you know? It's good that people still care about the game, and it's still got some love and attention here and there throughout the years, but the lack of widespread talk about the game, like really, truly pervasive widespread talk about the game, and the lack of the source code really hurt it. Now, not all is dim and gray on the source code front, because in the past 5 or so years, there have been things such as Blood CM that have come out to... Blood CM being a, basically a port of Blood's assets and the general kind of, you know, everything else about Blood to the Duke 32 engine. And, you know, it's a good attempt for sure. I'm not going to knock it at all, but, I mean, you're basically just taking Blood assets and sticking them in Duke and trying to replicate everything, and it just doesn't quite work. It's not horrible at all. I haven't spent that much time with it, but it didn't seem too bad. But it's just not quite the same. And again, not having the source code means you have to make compromises like that, because you can't actually recreate the original game. Now, the big thing that I want to get to is Blood GDX, which is a Java/libgdx port of the game that, unlike stuff like Blood CM, is an actual proper port of the code that happened to be reverse engineered by the author of Blood GDX, which is really cool. Because stuff like reverse engineering is how we got, like Doom 64 EX, which was, if you're not aware, Doom 64 EX was Kaiser of the Doom community, Samuel Villarreal. Is his reverse engineering of the Nintendo 64 version of Doom, Doom 64 obviously, that is basically a perfect port, but with, you know, the added capability of, you know, modding and all the extra stuff added to it to make it even more than just the N64 version as is, and that was really cool. Reverse engineering, it's obviously not an easy feat at all, but it's something that happens that can, allow stuff like this to exist without the source code. You just can't always bet on it because, again, it's hard work, and sometimes even the best of attempts don't really go anywhere. I also believe that the Strife source code was lost or is in the possession of someone else now, and it was reverse engineered for its eventual support in Z-Doom that it got like somewhere in the ballpark of almost 15 years ago now. Because Strife was in the same boat as Blood, where it was kind of a cult game that didn't really have a source port until about 2004 when it got support for Z-Doom, and that was all reverse engineered, I believe. It's definitely tough work, but it's doable, and the fact that it's doable and that some people out there have a ton of time and resources and perseverance means that it can get done. And that's what Blood GDX is. It's a reverse engineered port of the game that, actually looks and feels just like Blood. However, it has some nice new features, like, being able to switch back and forth between MIDI and CD music, and, some other nice little amenities that you would expect from a modern port of a game now. But it still plays just like Blood. It's not perfect, but it also doesn't have too many problems. It's really minor things. Minor gripes here and there. The big thing that it doesn't have is a software render, and that can be a bit of a deal breaker for some people. I can tolerate it, but I would prefer if it did have a software render down the line, and I do believe one is being worked on. It's just not it's probably lower priority than just making the damn thing work completely. That is a tough secret to get, and you can die easily if you don't do it right. But yeah, that's the super secret for this level. Then there's some crap in here. And then we're done with this one. But anyway, back to Blood GDX. It's a great port, and I think its existence, and now that it's being talked about and spread around, is really bringing a lot of new people into Blood, because again, the game is a little bit inaccessible when it just uses DOSBox and or real DOS. Okay, the music didn't load as I thought, so we'll just brute force it to load. There we go. That's a bug with this game that I really don't like, where the music just will not load from a stage that didn't have music previously. I want it to load. Now, Blood GDX, as I was saying, it's kind of opened up a lot of new doors because, modding capability has expanded, and as it continues to be worked on, it'll probably more and more resemble Blood exactly how it was on MS-DOS, but it might even kind of go in maybe a more Z-Doom direction, where it maybe deviates away strictly from vanilla and goes in directions with expanded modding support and all sorts of new things that Blood was previously incapable of doing. And you got to keep in mind that this is the build engine. It's a pretty flexible engine. There's some trickery you can get away with that you couldn't even think of doing in regular Doom. So by itself, the build engine is already kind of a big thing, although it's not the most stable and well-built of engines. But at the same time, you get more, you can get some more mileage out of its stock, as long as you're willing to put up with some of the strange anomalies that it has.
This is better than Kool-Aid.
And now that Blood GDX is kind of becoming a widespread thing, with more people playing, that's always good, It's unlikely that the source code will ever come to be, because even the CEO of Monolith, Jace Hall, who worked on this game, has tried to get the code from Atari, but Atari's just not having it, because there's not really money to be made. This is a cult game that could probably sell a decent few copies, if it could be, well, I mean, it still sells a reasonable amount of copies because it's commercially available on GOG and Steam, But with like a new port and all that, I mean, because there's not big dollar signs in the future for this game, you know, given that it's a cult game that, you know, a fair number of people know about, but it's not on the level of like Duke Nukem 3D or Doom. You know, Atari doesn't want to cough up the code for that, you know? And I guess from a business standpoint, it kind of makes sense, but it is very frustrating for fans because they have to put up with the fact that, you know, they're just going to get the shaft because there's not money to be made. And that always sucks when, you know, rights holders just sit on the rights and won't give it to anyone without a large sum of money that's just not justifiable. But Blood GDX is definitely helping on that front because, you know, now people can play without DOSBox or other measures that, you know, maybe aren't the most user-friendly in the world. Like, I don't really have a problem with DOSBox at all. I could play Blood on DOSBox forever if I had to. But I can understand completely that DOSBox maybe isn't the most user-friendly thing in the world. Even with, you know, the GOG version and the Steam versions, you know, config files that they give you and everything, I think there's still people who have trouble maybe getting it running or getting it running well, getting it running in certain ways, because, you know, some people might just like the default everything. What I personally do is I have a dedicated DOSBox install that's just in its own folder, and it does its own thing. I don't use multiple installs of DOSBox that usually come with old games. They usually include it in the game, or like with the game itself. But I don't know, I like to use my own.
I got
No, Duke, what happened?
Oh, shake it, baby.
But again, I don't think it's unreasonable to find that DOSBox can be, you know, unfriendly to like very new users or people who just want to, you know, grab and go without fussing with stuff. And Blood GDX remedies that because, you know, it takes away all the fuss, really. It makes it into a much more accessible experience, and, you know, accessibility is definitely a good thing, especially how sometimes these old games and old software can be really esoteric to the point of it being annoying. Some people just can't deal with it because it's that way. And there's no harm, no foul in that. It's just, you know, it's not for everyone. And you can't really, you know, you can't get too mad at people who don't want to put up with certain shit just because, you know, some people just have different ways of dealing with it. You know, me being someone who used DOS as a kid and knowing some of the basics about it and getting around and, you know, setting up something like DOSBox. That's so good. You know, setting up something like DOSBox is no problem to me. But I can imagine for some people it wouldn't be. And it's nice to have another alternative now, you know, a true, genuine alternative. Because, you know, again, like Blood CM and, you know, much less something like Z-Blood. Z-Blood being a attempt to make Blood on Z-Doom, which is pretty old. I don't know when the last version came out, but I happen to have a version from, like, early 2007, probably before I actually played this game for real the first time. That was just not, it's just not very good, you know? It's a good attempt, but there's a lot of stuff in this game that you just can't do with the Doom engine. I mean, one of the most glaring things is Doom doesn't have room over room. I mean, it sorta does now with like 3D floors and whatnot, but even then it's not like it is in build, and it certainly didn't have it at the time that I would have played it.
No,
you know, Z-Blood.
to play with me.
You know, that was just out of the equation back then. So yeah, good attempt, but it's just not the same. I mean, I would feel bad for anyone who played Blood basically the first time with that, because it's just not what you would really expect. Where is he? Ah, there he is.
That's awful.
Come on, get down here. Still hate that fucking flying behavior. It's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And I don't know why they programmed it that way. So they enjoy watching me suffer, I suppose. But yeah, Blood GDX is definitely a great thing, and I do hope that it continues to be developed. I'm pretty sure it will, because, you know, for anyone who might be worried about, oh, the copyright, they're going to take it down. I mean, I don't think Atari can rightfully get mad that someone's recreating a port with their code. I think legally it's out of their jurisdiction, because they're not taking, it's not someone taking the assets and trying to, you know, take them for free. Because with like a source port that's made with the source code, you know, the source code is open source, it's free, you can do whatever you want with it, you just can't redistribute the assets. And, you know, to me that makes sense. I mean, why would you want to do that? You know, some people are trying to find an easy way around copyrights and all that stuff, but I think as far as, you know, remaking Blood's engine, I don't think there's legal trouble for that. At least I would certainly hope not. I mean, I guess we'll have to see in due time, but I'd like to believe that, you know, the guy making Blood GDX is A-okay, because again, he's not trying to copy any of the game's assets or anything, just the sheer code. Secret level. Yeah, I'm trying to 100%, but it's not exactly easy, because some of these secrets I still don't know perfectly to this day. I certainly know a hell of a lot more than I did when I did my Let's Play over 6 years ago. But still comparatively less than, you know, a real Blood veteran would. So that about does it for the talk of, like, source ports of Blood GDX. They're definitely good. It's good that like a true, genuine port of Blood exists. And hopefully it'll continue to be worked on and expand and, you know, just be a real helpful thing. I mean, I don't expect it to work miracles. I mean, Blood's opportunity to really be a super successful game has passed. And I don't ever expect Blood to reach the level of popularity that Doom still has even to this day. But it would be nice to know that people still care. Oh man, that was well timed. That freaking zombie threw me off there. I was worried he was going to get in the way. But yeah, Blood's opportunity to really become a huge game is, I mean, it's well since passed, but it, you know, that doesn't mean that I don't want it to continue to succeed. I mean, there's some great mods that I've played, which I'll get to in a moment, that, you know, really make me wish that with the continued development of Blood GDX and its popularity rising, we'll see more quality mods and maybe even some really unique, cool stuff that was not able to be done before. Because that kind of stuff is what really makes a game last. You know, you get, especially with games like this, you get a lot of longevity out of modding. I mean, how do you think Doom has lasted as long as it has? It's just because a small, dedicated community, although it's not even really small, the Doom community is pretty freaking big. You know, comparing it to something like, you know, Call of Duty or something, yeah, it's comparatively tiny. But on its own accord, it's very big, and there are tons and tons and tons of just excellent mods that go in so many directions. You know, it's crazy. It can be dizzying for someone who's not really well-versed on this stuff to be like, wow, this old game that's almost 25 still has all these people playing it and modding it. And I don't think Blood will get to that point, just mostly because it kind of would have had a really dedicated community from the start. And it does have a dedicated small community, but it's not like with Doom. It would have had to have so much more things happen earlier in time, I believe, to really have reached Doom's level of popularity. But that's okay. It's still a great game, and still a good number of people play it. I mean, I started playing it again this year, just kind of randomly, because I kind of come and go with Blood. Like, I started playing it a bunch in 2011, then I stopped, and then I kind of picked it up again in early 2012 for my Let's Plays and to play mods. And I suppose I should start talking about the mods, because there are some really good mods available for this game that are worth trying. And I'll try to go into a little bit of detail and give some thoughts and opinions about them that, you know, is, you know, just to flesh this out a little bit more. The first one I want to talk about is probably, without a doubt, one of the best ones, and it's called Death Wish. I just did a long play on it, actually.
When's the hurting stop?
So my last set of videos was my long play for Death Wish. And Death Wish was created by Dustin Twilley, or he's known as Blowtoid online. And they are just a monumental set of levels. It's a 3-episode pack, and each one of them is just extremely well crafted and well put together. It's just true Blood and Nirvana. I mean, it really captures the spirit of Blood in the best way possible. More on that in a moment. And it just, yeah, it's just very high quality levels. I mean, as far as I'm willing to say, it honestly could be like a friggin' commercial expansion for the game, something like Cryptic Passage or Post-Mortem was. It really is that good. I mean, they are just extremely high quality, excellent, well put together maps that invoke all the best things about Blood as it is, and just runs with it, and it's just a really amazing thing. And I know I sound like I'm gushing really hard, but that's really how I feel. They're just excellent levels. And it really plays up the creepy vibe of Blood in a way that some mods don't. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, Death Wish is definitely one worth trying. It's just so well put together. Invokes a lot of great things. And, like, if it would have come out back in the 90s, I have no doubt in my mind that Dustin Twilley would have been hired to work at Monolith. Because it's just friggin' phenomenal. But Death Wish isn't the only one. I would say that Death Wish does have a large amount of popularity. And I would say, in my opinion, it's without a doubt the highest quality one there is out there. But there are a few more. And I'll list some more that I played. Another one of which being Bloody Pulp Fiction. Now this one's a little earlier than Death Wish. It predated the original release of Death Wish by a couple of years. And it's cool too. It takes place in more of a modern day setting, although you wouldn't really know it looking by the level design, because it still kind of keeps in line with how regular Blood levels are designed and how they feel, with some deviations here and there. But Bloody Pulp Fiction's good. It's got some well-designed levels, and it has a feel to it that somewhat deviates away a little bit from the feel of Blood, which I brought up when I was talking about Death Wish. And it is definitely worth playing. It's also got some neat new graphics here and there, and a couple of new songs, which aren't anything super amazing, but it's just nice to have something different than the stock Blood stuff, which works really well. I mean, you can't really beat the stock stuff. That's what made Blood what it is. But, changing it up's not bad. Yeah, Bloody Pulp Fiction's got some great stuff, including a really awesome secret level in the first episode that ramps up the spook factor of Blood to 11. Which is something Death Wish did as well, but Bloody Pulp Fiction does it really good too. And that one's also 3 episodes, although it's kind of 1 episode and then a 2-part episode, because episode 2 is not very long, and it kind of has a to-be-continued feel to it. Now, my problem with Bloody Pulp Fiction is that I feel as though some of the level design can be a little confusing and or unclear of where you need to actually go at times. Death Wish doesn't have this for me. I feel like Death Wish, everything just makes sense perfectly out of the gate. I mean, people may or may not disagree, and I may have had trouble with Death Wish my first time around, but I feel as though Bloody Pulp Fiction had me kind of running around a lot more than I would have liked. Just trying to figure out, where do I go now? Where do I go now? And I feel as though some of the level design is also maybe a little long-winded and or confusing here and there. Now, Death Wish has some big levels, but Bloody Pulp Fiction, sometimes they feel a little too empty for their own good here and there. It's not excessive, but it's not bad either.
You will know what to do when the time comes.
Oh no, I'm scared. Oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. Way to go. What's this guy doing? There we go. I don't know. That's still the weirdest bug to me. But yeah, Bloody Pulp Fiction, I feel like suffers from having sometimes levels that overstay their welcome. Like, I mean, I don't know if I really need to avoid spoilers or not. You can play any of these mods as you feel, but there's one level in episode 1 that takes place in a barn, like a series of barns on a farm, and it feels like it goes on and on and on. I must have spent like an hour and a half on that level my first time around. It was kind of crazy how long it felt. It just kept going and going and going. I didn't think it was ever going to stop. I mean, I won't even lie, my first time through I just got kind of fed up and no-clipped to the area where I needed to go next because I could not fucking figure out how to get to it. Once I got to it, it was okay. I finished the level, and then there was a couple more levels left in the episode, including the secret map, which is really cool. Worth trying. Hello? Okay, he's gone. Bye! Ooh, I could take that. Pentagram. But, yeah, I feel like that's where Bloody Pulp Fiction somewhat lacks, where Death Wish more than kind of makes up and doesn't have issues. Is that the level design sometimes feels a little overly long and maybe not quite as fun as the stock levels or Death Wish. And I know I keep bringing up Death Wish, but I mean, Death Wish to me is kind of like the ultimate benchmark for modding for this game, because I know that people have been modding for Blood since the late 90s, but there hasn't been a huge number of high-profile mods that I can really think of all that much. I mean, some of them are... I don't know how I keep missing with that thing. I mean, they've been kind of collected up, and, you know, you can read about them here and there, but I feel as though stuff like Death Wish and, like, Bloody Pulp Fiction are some of the first, like, major ones to get a lot of attention and get widespread. But anyway, yeah, Bloody Pulp Fiction, that's to me where it suffers. It's certainly not bad at all. It's definitely worth playing. It's got some really cool, unique things about it. It plays up the humor well. It definitely plays up the spooky elements well. It's worth trying. It's just, to me, it's just not as good as Death Wish. I mean, to me, I don't think anything will be as good as Death Wish, and I really hope that Dustin Twilley, the creator of Death Wish, has something up his sleeve. I mean, he works for a game company now that he may or may not have founded. I'd have to read up on that. And I don't think he has a ton of time for Blood anymore, but if he were to come back with a new set of episodes that could match the quality of Death Wish, I mean, that would be amazing. I would totally play that. It'd be freaking awesome. So here's to hoping, I suppose.
Lead to certain death. Choose wisely.
So I've not only played Bloody Pulp Fiction and Death Wish, but a few others. A more recent one that came out after Death Wish would be French Meat, which I believe came out in 2015. Okay, now this is another hard super secret to get to, because you got to jump on there and then you have to immediately hammer the door open. It's easy to die like that. But once you get in here, there's lots of good stuff. At least I thought there was more in there. Oh well, whatever. Just wanted to show where it was. I still missed 3. Rip. Okay, I'm gonna reload to get the music. Perfect. French Meat is a single episode, and it is, it's not quite as, I would say, involved as something like Bloody Pulp Fiction or Death Wish, because, for example, Death Wish has its own, like, story cutscenes, so you have that to follow, and Bloody Pulp Fiction has some new assets, as well as some new story cutscenes. French Meat doesn't have any of that. French Meat is just the mod, and that's it. You know, it's just be like a classic episode replacement for Doom. Nothing special, just the levels, and there you go. And holy shit, I cannot hit them. I like to kill them before I get up there so they don't mince me as soon as I go up there. Because you know how they are. There, perfect. But yeah, French Meat's just a plain old episode replacement, nothing more, but it's really good. The levels are designed well. Again, I still don't think it's quite as good as Death Wish. And I promise Dustin Twillie's not paying me to talk all this good about Death Wish. I just feel like it's a good benchmark, you know? But they're good levels. Definitely good levels. And the secret level, which I don't even know if you can find the secret level without cheating. I'd have to go back and try it again. But the secret level is, secret level's fun. It's a cool throwback. But yeah, French Meat's good. Another one that came out after Death Wish would be Caleb Will Have His Revenge on Toronto. Now this one kind of deviates away from the feel of Blood, like I've been talking about. And the feel of Blood, I mean, to just finally explain what I'm talking about is, you know, Blood has a certain feel to it. You come in, you know, you're shooting cultists, fighting zombies, supernatural. And it has kind of a grimy, dark feel to it. You know, and, you know, the music and the sounds that the game comes with really accentuate all this well. And those really kind of add up to the feel of Blood. You know, I kind of expect Blood to resemble exactly what I'm doing right now, going through dark caves, houses, abandoned places, and just shooting up enemies, and just, it has kind of a tongue-in-cheek feel to it, but it overall feels dark, moody, somber, and that kind of thing. And one mod, for example, being Caleb Will Have His Revenge on Toronto, or, you know, more succinctly, the one episode released of it called Scum of Dallas, deviates from this. The major thing is that the CD music, and MIDI music for that matter, are like actual commercial copyrighted songs by bands such as Pink Floyd, Nirvana, Ramones, Iggy Pop, and a few others. So the CD music is just literally those songs, which is kind of a copyright question to me, but I guess in the case of Blood modding, that's not too much attention that gets drawn to it. But it's definitely weird to be hearing these, you know, real-life rock songs while playing Blood. Even in MIDI format, it's still really kind of jarring, to be honest. And Caleb Will Have His Revenge on Toronto has kind of it kind of plays up the more sleazy and humorous side of Blood than it does the horror and the horror, ambient, and just general dark mood that Blood has. Okay, where's this guy? Sir? He was attacking a corpse. That's always good. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with deviating away from Blood's original MO, but I kind of feel like Blood is a little more rigid in what you can kind of do with it and what you can't do with it. And having, you know, copyrighted real-life music, I mean, literally the songs themselves as your CD music and then MIDIs as the MIDI soundtrack, just feels strange to me. Now, with something like Doom, I feel like you can get away with a lot more, you know, changing up the sounds, changing up the music. I mean, there's a ton of excellent music in Doom mods. But I feel like Doom is just more flexible that way. Like, it'll still feel like Doom, like, you know, fun, fast-paced action with the familiar Doom enemies. Even if some of the elements of the game like that aren't there. But with Blood, to me, it just doesn't feel like that. To me, Blood kind of needs to have, if not the stock assets and whatnot, it needs to have something that resembles them. Because it's weird to be killing cultists and not hearing them go, ah, or hearing them go, Jeroxy Cruel, and all that stuff. Now, that isn't changed in Scum of Dallas. You know, most of the sounds are the same. In that case, it's just the music and just the way the levels feel. There's a little bit more of an urban feel, which Blood doesn't really touch upon. That's honestly more Duke Nukem territory, if you ask me, and really Scum of Dallas would feel, I think, a lot more at home with Duke than it would with Blood. It honestly kind of feels like it would be more of a Duke Nukem mod, but it just happens to be a Blood mod. And the levels are good. You know, it's a well-designed mod for the most part, although it does suffer from some really cockamamie design decisions here and there. Sometimes some of the levels are really frustrating to get through. But it's not bad, not at all. It won't set the world on fire, and it's unfortunate that it appears that it will never be finished, because apparently it was supposed to be a 3-episode affair where Caleb actually goes all the way to Toronto to, you know, do his deeds, but it would seem as though it's not going to be seeing the light of day, unfortunately, due to one thing or another. So that kind of sucks. I mean, part of me is interested in seeing how the rest of the story plays out, but for what it's worth, the one episode is fine. Just a little frustrating at times, and really deviates away from the general mood and the feel that you would kind of come to expect from Blood. Because, I mean, if you've not played many Blood mods and have just played the stock game, you know what to expect with Blood. It's kind of spooky, kind of dark. It has some humor here and there, but it's not overplayed. You know, there's just a feel. And that's the only way I can really describe it. I know that's not very, it's not a very exact thing to say. You know, it's different for everyone. Feels, I mean, obviously you feel it. But that's kind of how it is for me. But yeah, Scum of Dallas is interesting and worth giving a shot. Just expect it to be a little different than what you might be thinking of when it comes to Blood. So after that, there's another one that I played was Legends of the Iconoclast. Actually, I played the remake of Legends of the Iconoclast. The original came out in like the early to mid-2000s, but I played the remakes. The remake of 1 is I think a 5-episode affair, and it's actually, you know, that's quite long, all things considered, and that's pretty ambitious. I think it's one of the bigger Blood mods ever made, when you put that into perspective. And how did I not catch on fire from that? That's crazy. But the problem with Legends of the Iconoclast, despite being such a big, ambitious mod that's been in development for a long time, and being one of the other big notable names other than Death Wish and stuff like Bloody Pulp Fiction, is it didn't really grab me the same way as those other mods did, because, again, it deviated away too much from the feel of Blood, and I don't think the levels were as well done. Okay, I know there's a super secret here. Yay! Oops. Yeah, don't do that. You gotta stay along the ledge. Yeah, I can't believe I found this either. Just give me everything. Yeah, they're not kidding. They fucking give you everything. Now, you know, I try not to be too strict on exactly how blood should be. I mean, I feel as though modders should have their own interpretations and things that they want to do with the engine, with the game's assets, but Legends of the Iconoclast just didn't tickle my fancy. What it does is it has a new story where you play as like a guy named oh, I forgot his name. I think it's an Italian name. And you're trying to avenge the death of your lover named Katrina, and, you know... Oh, yeah, his name's like Garibaldi or something. But you're trying to avenge the death of the lover, and, it's... I mean, again, I don't really hate that he took liberties with the story and the assets. I mean, it's got new sounds, it's got new music. But I don't, hate it for that. It just doesn't feel very much like Blood to me. It feels like I'm playing something that just happens to have a blood skin on it. It's kind of like playing... Okay, I don't know how they survived any of that. It just feels like I'm playing a game that has some blood assets, and not even all of them. Also, it tries to be more story focused, but I feel like Blood doesn't benefit a lot from having a lot of story. I mean, it's cool to have some backstory and reasons for things happening, but I don't think having a crazy involved story with a lot of reading and a lot of this and that, like it even wants you to read these story dialogues that comes with the game, like actual text files that it sends with the game. It wants you to read those to really get more story, and I think that's kind of unique and cool, but at the same time, it's... I don't know. I just feel like it kind of gets in the way of just enjoying the game for what it is. Yeah, bye!
Sleep, Ophelia.
Bye, Ophelia. So with all that said, yeah, Legends of the Iconoclast just doesn't really do it for me. It had potential, but I think the fact that a lot of the game's base assets are changed and the music's changed to what I feel is unfitting for Blood music. It's just music from random video games, but I feel like a lot of it could have been more toned for Blood's, you know, normal direction. But I won't complain too much. It's just, you know, you can't expect them to all be winners. So yeah, that about does it for this video. I just wanted to run through the first episode and just talk about my experience with Blood, mods, and all that other stuff. So, hopefully you enjoyed seeing this, and honestly, I think that'll about do it for the Blood content on my page. I don't really plan on doing a lot more stuff with Blood, at least not right now, maybe in the future. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.